Hey Pallavi.
Hi. It says that you can't.
To fourth edition of Buzz Night. I am Akansh, your host for tonight. I'm sure you all are very excited to look forward to Pooja's session. But before that, just wanted to call out a couple of things. This Buzz Night is certainly a very unique one for all of us because of two reasons. One, we are doing it remote for the first time. And two, it's going to be a hands-on workshop. And I hope you all know what the topic is. If not, we'll be presenting Pooja soon, where we'll be talking about incremental value thinking. So that's about it, and also a couple of housekeeping items that we would want to talk about. First, I hope you all have access to Mural so far. If not, request you all to do so. And you can look at the chat function below, where we'll be regularly pasting the Mural URL, where you can get familiarized with Mural. That's one thing. And second one, hope you're not into parallel internet activities. Let's preserve some bandwidth and let's have an undivided attention for the speaker today. Third thing, please use the chat functionality below to have, if you have any queries or concerns or feedback or appreciation. Apart from that, one last thing is we have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions for the presenter, you know where to ask. Having said that, really very curious to know what the session is going to be all about. I would like to hand over to Pooja, but before that, let me introduce you to her. Pooja is a seasoned product professional with 10 plus years of experience in building software products and shipping them. She's been a core enthusiast in business analysis and product management. Also, she's been working with ThoughtWorks since last 5+ years. Over to you, Pooja. Welcome.
Thank you, Akansh, and thank you for the kind words. Hi, everybody. I am excited to have you here today in the fourth edition of Buzz Night. I will just start sharing my screen. And today's topic that we're going to be discussing for the next 90 odd minutes is incremental value thinking. Before we move on, just a few ground rules. As Akansh said, there is going to be a few sections to this. I will pause every now and then for questions. So if you have questions, put it on chat and the organizers will help call out those questions in those smaller breaks. Also, you can use other non-verbal communication within Zoom by clicking on participants, and there you have options like raise your hand. Okay, so without much ado, let's get started. Incremental value thinking. So this is what's our agenda going to look like for the next few minutes. We're going to be talking about incremental value thinking, and within that, we're going to be first talking about incremental value thinking using minimalism, and then the principles of incremental value thinking applied to products, features, and then to stories as well. And finally, we'll move on to the next half of the case study, next half of the workshop, in which we'll be doing a hands-on case study. In the case study, we'll be splitting out into virtual rooms, and each room will have a PO, and they'll help you navigate through the deliverables in the case study. I'll give you more directions when we reach the case study stage. But for now, let's first get started on what is incremental value thinking. So incremental value thinking is basically an approach where you take a very big idea or a very big chunk and you break it into smaller pieces and then implement one piece at a time. So there are three things here: incremental, value, and thinking or approach. Incremental, as the name suggests, is adding little by little, one at a time. And then value is adding that value a little by little. And before we move on to what is minimalism and how do we do all of this, let's first talk about who are we. All of us in this call, we are either BAs or product managers or product owners or XDs, devs, QAs. All of these are roles really, which talk about a job specification. But if you zoom out a little and look at the big picture, all of what are we in it for? We're here because we want to create some value, and that is who we are. We are value creators. And that is what we're going to talk about. How do we create value? There are two ways basically to create value. One way is a very traditional method of thinking of all the valuable and important features or functions or deliverables that can go out to achieve a particular aim, and plotting each of all of them into a lot of sprints. That is one method. The other method, which is going to be the focus of our discussion, is the one in which the first step is the same. So we think of all the important and valuable functions or features, and then we pick out the ones that are most important out of those. And then only the ones that are most important, we take those and we plot them into sprints. And everything else, which are also valuable, but probably not the most valuable in the beginning, we push them into the backlog. And then we revisit them every now and then. And that is the method that we believe generates more value and better value incrementally. Have you all heard the word minimalism? Anybody?
Yes.
So minimalism is a very, is a fad these days, especially if you're into home reorganization or calendar reorganization. It's like everybody is trying to declutter, right? And that is something which is also the new mantra for the software industry as well. But that said, minimalism is not something new to us, and it is not something that only XDs, like the experienced designers or experienced creators or UX people have to worry about. It's something that anybody who is involved in making a product should be concerned about. Some very big examples of minimalism applied to software are the stark example is Google website, which is a very bare minimum website, and that was its USP when it first came out, competing with others like Yahoo and other search engines. One of the USPs of Google was that it was very decluttered, it was very clean, minimalistic in a way. And then another example is the login page of Twitter, which is again a very clean piece, a very minimalistic piece. And for that matter, these days, most of the login pages for any app would be similar, would be very, very minimalistic. I'll pause here for any questions.
Pooja, there's one in the chat which says, how do we ensure which is important and value add?
We'll come to that. There, so just saying that do it and do it right will obviously not be very helpful. So in the next few slides, we'll come to that part where we can give it a little bit of structure so that it becomes a little easier. Any other questions?
No.
How is it different from your other frameworks? This particular incremental value thinking.
How do you mean other frameworks? Could you give me a few examples of what you have in mind?
So like even in Scrum, we do that, the incremental delivery, right? So how is that differ from this particular session with, with Agile Scrum framework?
So incremental value thinking is an approach. It is a way to think. It can be applied, and it is applied in a lot of existing measures as well. It can be applied to Scrum, to Lean, to all kinds of frameworks. That's the beauty of it. It's just a way of thinking.
Okay.
Hope that answers the question. As we delve in deeper, we'll get more, clarity on the structure that can help us achieve that, whichever software methodology we are using. So the next part is incremental value thinking in the context of a product. And a very common term in the software industry these days is minimum viable product, or MVP. So one way to achieve incremental value thinking in the context of a product is to apply the principles of minimum viable product, or MVP. Before we talk about how to use this approach to create a good product, let's talk about what it is basically. So MVP is basically a product creation approach that enables quick value at low cost. So there are two things here. One is deriving quick value and doing that at a very low cost. And it's also an approach that helps validate ideas in a very short period of time. So again, two aspects. One is quick value at low cost. And the other is validating ideas, again, in less time. And time is money. So, and this is the typical MVP cycle. You might have seen this before in other places. This cycle basically starts at build. So what it says is build something small, measure it, and then learn from what you've already shipped out and measured. And then based on these learnings, build incrementally on top of what you'd already built. And this cycle continues until you've got a mammoth product. Just a disclaimer, what MVP is not is or what MVP is not necessarily is a product in action, meaning that MVP could mean a working software product or a piece of working software product, or it could mean anything that is enough to test the viability of a product. It could even mean building enough prototypes and wireframes and releasing it or showing it to certain pilot users, if that is helping you validate whether your idea is going to be viable or not. But in the context of this conversation, we are going to be mostly looking at MVP in the context of a working software. Now, the next part is moving on to what are the steps to create a minimum viable product. So first, the first step in creating a minimum viable product is release the product with one or very few key functions which you feel are needed by the user. And then you collect user feedback. We collect user feedback. And then based on the feedback we've collected, we either improve the existing function or we add a new function. And then this happens iteratively, in which we go back and we collect more user feedback depending on based on what we've just now released. And then based on that feedback, we again add more functions or features. So again, first we release a product with some basic key functions, then we collect some user feedback, then we add a little bit on top of the existing functions, then we collect user feedback, and then we keep doing that, collecting feedback, adding more, collecting feedback, adding more. And basically we've reduced the feedback cycle, and we've also made sure that any feedback that's coming our way, we are able to quickly accommodate that feedback. Just a small thing here, that when we say release the product with key functions, it's not like just taking one function and releasing it. It should be those set of core functions that will be sufficient to implement an idea or to deliver some value to the user. So the user should be able to do something. For example, if we want to create a e-commerce website, the MVP will not be just a login function, because there's no value that the user can derive by just logging in. This diagram is a very good pictorial representation of MVP. It just talks about what is MVP and what is not MVP again. So this is not MVP, wherein when the requirement is that the user needs to commute from point A to point B. The first step you do is you make wheels. We make wheels, and then we make like a wheel and wheels and the structure around it, and then we make like the car structure, and finally we make the car. This is not MVP. As opposed to that, this is MVP, in which in the first step, we've probably created just a skateboard. The user can use it, although they're not very happy about it. In the second step, we've created a small scooter. Again, the user is able to commute from point A to point B, although that is not the most convenient way to do that, but at least they're able to commute. The next step is using the same components that we have already delivered. Reusing these components, we add a little more and we make it into a bicycle, which again is delivering value because it's helping user, but it's not the best thing that the user would have wanted. The next step is from bicycle, we're moving on to a motorbike, and finally to a car. So the difference, sorry? There's a little bit of disturbance. Can everybody go on mute, please, if you're not asking a question?
Pooja, you are on mute.
Okay. Host, please stop muting me. In the first method, we've added value only at the very end, wherein in the first 3 steps, there's nothing that the user can do with it. And in the second method, we've added value at every step. Although it's not, the most beautiful solution, but at least the basic functionality is out there. So this is what MVP is, the second one. Now some examples just to make it more clearer. Facebook is a very good example. Back in 2004, when they started off, it was a bare bones website wherein a user had a very simple profile page and could connect with their group mates. That's it. And now it has grown to this, mammoth company which has like billions of features and does whatnot. Another example, and this is a non-software example, is Virgin Airlines. Richard Branson started off Virgin Airlines sometime back with just one plane going between Gatwick and Newark. So just one plane and one route. That is one of the most brilliant examples of MVP delivered. And then he added on more and more planes and routes to his portfolio. Now Virgin Airlines is one of the biggest airlines in Europe. So next, we're going to be talking about the next aspect of incremental value thinking, which is features. But before that, any questions until this point of time? Organizers?
Which is just one quick question. I mean, if you want to differentiate a prototype from the MVP, how do we do that? I mean, what would be the right way to do that?
So a prototype is generally something which is maybe a click through using an InVision or something that you've made, which the user is able to give you feedback on, but they're not able to use it really. So suppose again, if you take an e-commerce website as an example, a prototype is just somewhere they can navigate and they can tell you what they like, what they don't like, but they're not actually able to make a purchase. In an MVP though, we would want a user to be able to make a purchase as well, because that is why the user is going to an e-commerce website. But then again, if you're the reason of you creating that website or that e-commerce website is not to understand whether e-commerce websites will generally, if the reason to create that e-commerce website is to check the idea or validate the idea whether e-commerce as a platform will work or not. Suppose you want to create an e-commerce website for selling cars. You don't want to actually wait until the time you've built it and then you want to see whether people actually want to buy cars on the internet via e-commerce website or not. So in that case, you might want to not wait until the working software product or working MVP. You might want to check with either a user survey or a clickable prototype to see if actually people go till the end and are interested in buying a car on the internet.
Okay.
Hope that answers the question.
Yes.
Okay, so the next part is, we've now covered incremental value thinking in the context of a product. Now we move on from product to features. So once, an MVP has been created for a product.
Sorry, Krishna here. I just got one doubt. When we are doing the incremental value thinking, how do we factor the risk? Because we are only thinking from a small chunks perspective, right? Overall picture. How do we envision or foresee the risk which is at a big picture level?
Thank you for the question. That's a very nice question. So the whole point of incremental value thinking is thinking of small pieces while talking of delivery. So like when I want to deliver some software to the user, I am thinking only in bits and pieces. But when I'm doing the research, I am not thinking of only that small piece. For example, again, in the e-commerce example, if I am right now at that stage where I have already validated that users will buy cards on the internet if I sell it, the next step for me is to just create a website where people can see cars cars and buy it. And then maybe I add more features. That'll be probably the MVP. But at that time also, I'm not just thinking of, should I just list down cars and only focus on that step? Like only looking at, that step that I'm working on right now, but also be looking at the bigger picture. What is my end goal? What is my end vision? How is this tying back to my end vision? And that vision that I already thought of in the beginning, before maybe even the validation of the idea, that vision and those sets of goals, they would already have been arrived at by looking at the risks. So what I'm trying to say is that incremental value thinking is thinking of smaller pieces and delivering smaller pieces, but always keeping the big picture in mind.
Pooja, I
Nitya,
consolidated some of the questions. Do you want to address them now? They are mostly on MVP.
Okay, maybe we move on and we get back to the questions at the end.
Sure.
Cool, thank you. The next part is incremental value thinking within features. So now you've arrived at an MVP where these 5 or 4 are the list of features that should go in the MVP. Now, when we are building those feature lists, how do we take the incremental value thinking and apply it there? So one, generic statement is cut down the frills. Whatever doesn't seem like, whatever seems decorative really, just cut it out and move it for later. Does not mean that nothing is beautiful, but it's just coming later. And one of the structures that you can use to do that is the Pareto ranking. Pareto ranking, or the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 principle. I mean, the world knows it in different names, but the principle states that 20% of the effort leads to 80% of the results. And in the context of features and incremental value thinking, it means that we need to highlight, or we need to recognize out of the entire feature list, which are the features, which are the 20% of those features, which will get us 80% of the value. And that 20% set is what we want to keep within our features list, and everything else again moves to the backlog. So that is one structure which can be quickly applied to sort of implement incremental value thinking within a feature set. I'm quickly moving on to incremental value thinking within stories. So now we derived an MVP, we cut down a very thin slice of features. Now we've come down to stories. So within each feature, I have say 20 stories, which were trimmed down to 10 stories using, or maybe 5 stories using the Pareto principle. Now within each story, how do I cut out that layer of fat? How do I make sure that stories are really thin? So again, the generic advice or the generic statement is cut thin slices, but easier said than done. So one of the ways to implement this is if you're writing a story, there are a lot of acceptance criteria for each story, then question each AC, meaning that check whether at every AC, check whether that AC is adding, is absolutely needed for that story, or will it, if I remove that AC from the story, will the story still deliver some value? If it will, then take out that AC, put it in a different story. Again, like splitting stories, that's like a science in itself, and that can go on for like 2-3 days. But I'm just taking out one method which I feel can be done very straightforward to make sure that we have thinner stories. So I'll just give you an example of how thin or small stories help. This is a typical agile board which has to do, doing and done lanes. And it has a few stories. A few of them are small 1, 2 and 3. And a few of them are big. Let's assume that the big stories can be split out into 2 or 3 smaller stories. This is what day 1 would look like. So all the stories are moved to doing. By day 2, small stories are done, let's assume. And the big stories are halfway there, but not done yet. And on the 3rd day, all the stories are moved. So you could say that, if one big story is 3 small stories, then 2 big stories is 6 small stories, and the net deliverable or the net output within 3 days is the same. But the difference is that on day 2, the user already got something, even if you didn't push it out for the world to see. Even if you did not release it on live, but at least something got released within your pipeline, and something could have been tested, and maybe even the a pilot user can look at it and give you immediate feedback. So I'm just going to summarize what we've done until now, and then I'll pause again for 2 minutes for questions. What we've done is, this was our agenda where we were talking about incremental value thinking and tying it back to minimalism, and then using incremental value thinking in the context of products, features, and stories. For products, we said MVP approach, and we gave a very simple list of 3 steps to carve out an MVP. For features, we said one way is to do Pareto ranking, which it helps cut the features into a slimmer feature. And for stories, again, to carve a thin story, one way could be to question each acceptance criteria, whether it still needs to be within the story for the story to add value. The next step for us is case study. I'll just pause for a minute for questions. Organizers, you have a list of curated questions.
There's one question from Niyati. We always focus on specific, we always focus on specific user groups for user research and viable product or testing POCs. And we start with creating a product for specific group. How this can be extended later to a bigger group and vision.
Great. So that's a very relevant question, because that is what we do, right? We, when I'm again sticking to the same example of e-commerce website, when we are creating an e-commerce website, we don't say that the 1.2 billion people in India are going to be my target audience. We cut it down further to say maybe only people who are urban dwellers between 20 to 25 years or 25 to 30 years of age, they are going to be my target audience. And now say that is how Amazon started 15 years back, let's assume, then in India. And then now, and then they moved on to that state where they've added more product categories which are not applicable to this user group anymore. Maybe they've added categories which are more applicable to maybe, you know, either teenagers or elders. The way to scale the app or the e-commerce website in such a scenario would be to carve out those target groups again, the way, you know, it was done in the beginning. List them as user personas, understand what kind of user journeys they currently have to buy the things that they're currently buying, not on Amazon, like not on our e-commerce website, but somewhere else. And then try to carve out a journey within our e-commerce website for them and try to add that, complementing it to the existing user's journey. Meaning that, you know, again, the big picture thing where you keep your current target audience also in mind and the next one also in mind. But again, within that also incrementally adding those things, because this is again a new experiment that we're running, that probably until now we were only looking at people from 25 to 30 years of age, but probably 30 to 40 years of age group is also people who might, you know, come to us. So shipping out a very thin slice to check whether that is actually going to happen in the real world, and then build a little bit more on that.
So Pooja, Krishna here once again. So when you are saying that thin slice, is it, are we saying that we are going to have a model of invest, whereas it should be, you know, negotiable and testable and value add? But when I'm writing the acceptance criteria for a user story, it should cover end to end, right? That is one thing. Second thing, when that particular user story has got multiple stakeholders for that particular story to deliver, how do I define user acceptance criteria which can matter for all the stakeholders? For example, a particular solution I am planning to deliver, which will have 3-4 stakeholders involved in it. So one stakeholder says, this is not my scope, I will not do it. So again, it comes as splitting of the stories, right? So how do we ensure that it should be, you know, captured in acceptance criteria? Because this is my personal experience, which I'm sharing with you. When I write the user story, the stakeholder comes and says, boss, look at, this is my boundary. I cannot do beyond this. Or this is within the boundary, but this is not my compartment. Again, the question comes that remove this acceptance criteria. But when I look at overall story perspective, if I want to mark it done, I need to have that acceptance criteria. Do you agree?
Of course, as I said, all of these things are easier said than done. Let me try to give you an example which hopefully is an analogy to what you're saying. So suppose in the same e-commerce website, we're building an e-commerce website to sell cars, say, and there are various stakeholders or various roles within the system for this e-commerce website. And one is, of course, the end user who's going to buy the car. The other is the seller who's going to sell it. Suppose this is a marketplace. And there's one more who's the admin who's going to, say upload details of products or manage the content. The other could be a product manager who's going to look at analytics. That is also a stakeholder because he or she would, or they would also need a few functionalities like analytics to be delivered to them. The way to go about this is to not think of delivering the most value within a story, because in the invest principles, one aspect is also S, which is small. So the story should be as small as possible, while also being able to deliver value and be independent and be testable and all of the, and going through all of the invest principles, but also trying to see that if I can within one slice of the story or within one story just focus on one particular stakeholder and not try to accomplish everything within that one story. For example, within the first story, suppose the story, the feature that we're working on is customer reviews. So one thing is about the customer being able to post a review, and the other is about the customer being able to see reviews. And it doesn't have to be in one big story in which I should be able to post reviews and somebody else should be able to immediately see it. What I could also say is that I as a customer should be able to post reviews, and that is value enough for me as a customer, because I feel satisfied that I gave some feedback. And it's also valuable for the seller because they probably got this without a lot of effort being put in by the dev team. And there could be another story which says that given customers have given a lot of feedback on a product, other customers who are seeing that product should be able to see those reviews. So that is how we've split it out into two different pieces, and also managed to make sure that some value is being delivered in both of these pieces. Do you think that answers the question?
Yes, Pooja.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'll just move on to the case study. So the next step is the case study. But before I tell you more about the case study, there's a few directives, if you may. So one is, this is going to be a group activity wherein all of us are going to be divided into smaller groups, and we need to come up with deliverables that will be asked out of us within a group. So do not take it as an individual activity. Discuss within your group and then come up with a deliverable. We will be, for this purpose, we'll be split out into smaller groups of a few people within Zoom breakout sessions. These are virtual rooms. And in the entire case study, we're going to spend roughly 35 minutes to solve the case study. And we'll keep broadcasting messages after every few minutes on what the deliverable is for the next few minutes. For example, you'll have deliverables like, given a particular scenario, come up with a feature list, carve out an MVP, come up with a story map, and come up with one or two detailed stories. The organizers will post all those messages and will give you also the time that you have for each of these deliverables. Please move very quickly. Don't get into rabbit hole discussions, because since this is a very time crunched workshop, you won't have a lot of time to deliver each of the outcomes. And within the Zoom room or the virtual room, do not exit it until you're done with all deliverables, because then you might come back to the main meeting room, and I don't know if we can send you back into your group again. And each virtual room will have a PO who's very much accustomed, or like very much who very much knows the case study in and out, and they can answer all your questions and help you reach the deliverables. But do not totally depend on them. And I think you've already seen emails that you got with the invite, which say that we're going to use mural boards to collaborate within the group. So I'm going to give you a little bit of glimpse on how to use mural. So I'm just going to go to a mural board. It's taking its own sweet time. This is one of those times where, everything works before, but in demo time, everything fails. Okay, I think I have it open somewhere else. Okay. So we're hoping you've had the chance to play around a little bit with Mural. Your Mural board will look something like this, in which the name of the group will be on the top. The name of the group will also be on the top of your Zoom room or the Zoom window. So you can look at that group name, and that part of the Mural board you could go to by looking at this outline and just clicking on the group. So suppose I'm on group 2, I click on group 2 and I land here. Here is already, I can zoom in by either pinch and zoom or by using this at the bottom. So I can just click on sections and it will help me go there. And then there are these plus and minus to zoom in and out. And then I can drag and move the board to go up. Okay. On the top is the user journey, which we will go through in some time after we talk about the basic case study. Given the user journey, you'll have to prepare a feature list. I've given some examples of feature list here. This is like in the blue cards, you can note down the features, and then in the in the green circles, you can note down the priority number of each. And then you can use these stars to mark out which of these features would go in the MVP. Then below that is the story mapping exercise, where you can write down the epic or the feature name, and which is part of your MVP. And then you can write down the story summary or the story name of some of those stories within that epic. And then when we do story mapping exercise, then again, you can use these stars. And then at the end, we'll also ask you to probably write down a few detailed stories as well, like detail out a few stories.
The stories have to be within specific character limits, or it can be an anecdote like.
It's not Twitter, so anything that you can fit within that card, and the card size keeps increasing. So the case study is this. The case study is there's a company called Tinkering Watches, and we are Tinkering Watches. We sell watches. Watches that are simple, minimalistically designed, and very cost effective. We started off long back, 11 years back, as a seller on Amazon, and have done pretty good since then. We have a very good customer base right now across different marketplaces, and we sell roughly 20 watches per day. And the average price of our watch is 5,000. It could go up to like 20, 30,000 as well. Right now, apart from selling on marketplaces, we also have a bare bones website, which we're not interested in keeping. We want to scrap that. It was built way long ago. And this website only gives users information about us, like who are we, and doesn't give a lot of information. I mean, users can't buy watches really on this website. Now that we've grown so much, we feel that it's time that we should have our own place on the internet to sell watches, and we want your help to make it. Any questions on the case study?
And we want to go away with the existing marketplaces where we have our business right now?
Not really, not for the foreseeable future.
So we want to continue on both the places, and but our own place would take the priority.
In a way.
What is the percentage currently we are paying to Amazon? Like, this will help us in building our story, like 20% of the value of the watch. Like if we are selling for 5,000, maybe 700 or 800 goes to Amazon. So what is that?
Different marketplaces have different commission percentages, but not 20-30%. It generally is in the line of 2 to 5%. So this is the user journey that I've already built out for you. A very minimalistic user journey in which the first step, this is the cards on the top are the user interactions or the user steps, and the light purple ones at the bottom are the user actions within that particular step. So the first step is a customer decides to buy a watch on Tinkering. Within that, what they're doing is a customer has decided that they want to buy a watch, say, you know, a rose gold dial with a metal strap watch, and they go online and they search on Google or on Bing for watches under 10K. This is when our website that we're going to build, that also comes up. And that is where they open up tinkeringwatches.com. There is an alternate flow wherein it says that users directly come to tinkeringwatches.com because they are already aware of the brand. I've crossed it out because that is not a flow that we want to explore right now. So let's just focus on the first part where they're coming via Google and they don't know much about us. So within the next step, opening up tinkeringwatches.com, they land on the home page and the user wants to know a little bit about the company before they move on. And then the next step is they want to see a few watches and check out their prices before they decide to spend more time on this website. And then they need to find, like, once they've decided, yes, they like the products and the prices, then they browse more watches within the website and try to, with, you know, these details in mind, the rose gold dial and everything, and then choose on few watches. So that is when they decide on staying on, because they found a lot of watches with these details. Next step is filtering, browsing, choosing, sorting, all of that, wherein users they can filter for, you know, a particular kind of strap, for example, and then the user probably finds a few that they like. They probably shortlist 3 watches out of them, review the prices of each of them. Maybe they even compare that to other marketplaces or other platforms where similar watches are being sold, or maybe even different company. Because they're not really brand loyal or anything to us right now. So maybe they even go to like a Fossil or a Titan or something and compare watches and prices there. The next step is decision time, wherein the user decides on a particular watch at tinkering.com and adds it to their cart, goes to the cart and proceeds to check out. The next part is payment and confirmation, wherein they enter in all details that are needed for them to make place the order, and then they see a payment and order confirmation. And the final step is that they get the watch, wherein they are able to track the delivery of a watch, and maybe they want to contact somebody, contact the company about the delivery. Finally, the watch is delivered, they try it on, they leave a few reviews online maybe, and hopefully they like it and they use it regularly. That's the user journey. Again, this user journey is already there within the mural board that we're going to be using for each group. We've already covered how to use mural. So I will stop sharing and I'll request the organizers to break us out into Zoom rooms.
I think before we go, Pooja, there's one question, which is what is the current traffic on the website? Ankit is asking.
On the Barebones website, we don't have any analytics or anything built in. This was built, as I said, like 6 years ago with not much foresight.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I think you answered my question by saying that people are not already familiar with, so got that, thank you.
Cool, so we'll meet back in 35 minutes.
I'll be in which group?
We'll all come to know.
Hey, folks, so what we'll be doing is we'll be using the breakout rooms feature within Zoom, and we'll be assigning you automatically to random groups. So it will be done in the next 1 or 2 minutes. You'll get a pop-up on your screen which will say move to this particular breakout room. Please click on join that breakout room and do not exit the breakout room, otherwise you won't be able to join back. So just give us a couple of minutes. We're just moving things around, and you should be in your rooms in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
So I joined little late. So on the mural, I am logged in with my user ID. So is there any link through which I should log in to mural?
We will, so in every group, we will have somebody from the organizing committee acting as a PO. They will have the links for the mural board. Once you are in the breakout rooms, they'll send those links again.
Okay, fine. Thanks.
Right.
In the meantime, has anybody already posted the link to mural? Yeah. So maybe in the meantime, everybody can individually go and play around a little with mural. If there are any questions in the meantime, I am happy to take them as well. In case of no questions, I'm happy to just breathe as well.
You can just check the chats also, Pooja. There are some questions there. Maybe you can answer them async. It's fine.
Yeah. There was a question from Pallavi about incremental value. Can it be arrived on at the beginning of development, or like over time, does it fade away or does it get diluted? I've been able to, with help from others, I've been able to successfully apply incremental value thinking across the life cycle of a product. So like in the beginning also and later on as well. I agree that, what we would have set out as the priority list in the beginning would probably change a few weeks or a few months down the line. And that is a good thing because the changes are there because we've gotten some, new inputs, or we've come to know more things about the things that we did not know previously. And that is why our list of priorities is changing. And if you're still able to do it, like deliver value incrementally or dole out product incrementally, then we'll be able to sort of make use of all of the feedback coming our way and, the moving priorities.
Okay.
Hi Pooja, this is Ashmita. Before we break out into our groups, I had a quick question on how do you incorporate design discussions and UX in the whole cycle?
Sure. So, outside of the topic, this is not related to incremental value thinking, but it's always good to have like representatives of each role from the beginning, so that everybody is aligned and everybody can give valuable inputs. Specifically to the topic of incremental value thinking and involving design also in that aspect, I can give you a very brief example. So there was this one time where we were developing a website for a car manufacturer, and this is a jazzy manufacturer with exorbitant cars. So they would, meaning cars with exorbitant prices. So they would obviously their website would also be very jazzy, and they wanted like the product listing page to also have cars which can like the car is coming in and going out when you're scrolling through the listing page and all of that. And the way we implemented all of that is also that in the first cut we didn't obviously have all of these animations and all of these effects. In the first cut it was a bare minimum wherein just a car's pic is coming in and a little bit of details of the car. And then in the second cut we said, okay, next, do you want like a 3D sort of picture, 3D image of a car, or do you rather want to add more details, given that adding more details is less expensive, and adding animation or a 3D monitoring, a 3D modeling of a car is much more expensive. And then when conversations go on around what is the cost and what is the value, then accordingly we were able to slowly toll it out, and then across a few weeks ultimately land in that place where they wanted in terms of a very jazzy effect.
All right, thank you.
Hi all. So I'm going to split all of us into breakout rooms. So no more questions for now. We can take the questions post the case study. So you should receive a notification on your screen now.
Hey, Adarsh.
Sorry, yeah. We still have people coming back.
Others, you are on mute.
I think we have everybody now.
I know. I was just calling out the countdown for the breakout rooms to close. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had enough time to get all your solutions in. So now we'll proceed with the other part of the presentation. So over to Pooja.
Thank you, Adarsh. So, any quick comments about the experience?
I have one. What I'm feeling is like what we worked on the case study is a good experience from getting the requirements from the product owners and breaking them down till the stories. But working on the iterative value in that case study, how is that covered, the iterative value in that case study? That is the question.
Sure. The way the messages were broadcasted was that first, come up with a list of features, then prioritize it, and then apply Pareto to sort of remove all the, not absolutely critical features, and only come up with a very small set of features, which is MVP. That is how, for example, from a product point of view, the incremental value thinking was applied. From within the story mapping exercise also, when the next broadcast message was about the budget is now cut to half. So then again, how do you trim out so that, again, you're probably cutting out a few features. Also within a feature, you have to probably let go of a few stories. So that is how, again, incremental value thinking was applied in a feature set, saying that within a feature, how can I make it a very small piece and incrementally add more pieces?
Okay, so before we release to production, can we say that we are internally also we are applying the incremental value, or we talk about like when we deliver the product and then we take the feedback and then we incrementally build upon based on the feedback. That's what we discussed in the initial presentation. So incremental value is applied during the development or between the releases?
Both, really, because for any product, we're getting feedback from a lot of sources, right? We're getting feedback from like the product owner or the product manager, also from pilot users who might be like the first cut of users who get the product. If we're doing any A/B testing, then from those test users, and we're also, of course, getting the feedback from the actual end users, which would be like at the end of the first release cycle or a particular release cycle. So this particular approach is being applied in all of these facets.
Just a quick call out, Pooja, maybe you can just run through the solution because we are already 15 minutes over.
Sure. So I'll just go back to the mural, and in the end, we will open up for Q&A. Yeah. So this is the baseline solution. Again, this is just my version of the solution. It doesn't have to be the solution. The whole point was to be able to, do thinner slices of everything. If you've done that, then, this is just one alternate view of it. So this was the user journey, and within that, the features I had listed was, so home, about us, contact us, product listing, enter cart details, and all of these things like filtering, sorting, adding to cart, returns, checking out, payment, adding or viewing credit cards, tracking orders, and a ton of other things. comparing discounts, virtual try on maybe even, and wish list items. To that, when I sort of applied prioritization and then the Pareto principle, what I was left with was these 6 features, which is product listing, product quick view. Instead of like a product details page, I said maybe a quick view of a product. And then checkout, order confirmation, entering card details, and payment. This was my feature list for MVP. And then when we did user story, when I did user story mapping, what I did is within these features, the 6 features that I marked as MVP, within that I said product listing, for example, may have features like, this is the landing page or the product listing page, right? Where you see all the products and overview. So here, as a user, I want to see all the watches listed with some basic details, maybe just name and price, or the model number and price. And next card could be something like, as a user, I want the listing page to load quickly. So something like pagination or lazy scrolling is applied. Because if I'm looking at say 500 watches, then I don't want them to be loaded together. And then maybe another story like, as a user, I want to see the images of all watches in the listing page. And then a few more stories. So like a separate story about photos or pictures of watches. And then for the product quick view, likewise, I had stories that like as a user, I want to see details of a watch in a quick view. The details like name, price, color, dial type, strap type, like what color is the dial, what shape is the dial, what is it, a steel strap or a metal or a leather strap. And maybe as a user, I also want to see pictures, more pictures of the watch than were originally there in the listing page. Maybe I want to zoom in and out of the watches as well. In my group, people were talking about like videos as well of the watches. So that could also be one story. And then checkout is, as a user, I'd want to buy a watch. And then, and then the other epics I did not detail out. Just one last thing that I detailed out is under order confirmation, as a user, I want to see confirmation of my order. So if you notice here, there is like the ones that are marked star after the budget has been cut into half, those are the ones that we're interested in. That flow, a person is able to see the list of products, so hopefully paginated. That means they're seeing maybe 10 or 20 products at a time. They're able to see a quick view of the product details and a few pictures, and they're able to click on buy now, and then they're able to get a confirmation. So there's no add to cart, there is no payment at all here. This in my mind is the MVP, and everything else can be done like in a different way. So for example, for payments, we could do cash on delivery, and for buy now. And this actually came out in my group as well, that we don't really need the add to cart and then go to cart and then proceed to checkout, because most people who are coming to buy like a 5,000 or 10,000 rupees watch would probably be buying just one watch at a time. So maybe for starters, we don't really need the add to cart option, and just buy now is the option. And then I detailed out a few user stories. I'll just go through one of them. Or maybe I just leave the screen for people to read. So there are 2 stories that I detailed out.
We are able to only see your name. We are not able to see the screen.
Sorry? Oh, I'm not sharing my screen.
No, I can see your screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
We are seeing only the name. Maybe it's my. Okay, yeah, got it. Sorry.
No problem.
So one thing I'd like to just say that I had done my own shopping site because the features and the listings which you mentioned, like all the things which you said are actually free of cost today. So if I take a open cart application and a purple tree, so what all features you said are available for free. And I have myself, without any programming knowledge, I was able to design my own shopping site. And I took a theme forest. I could get more features than what you have said. So everything I can do it within a budget of 10,000, and that too in a span of 2 hours. So
exactly, and that is what MVP is about, right? So if a customer comes or like if a product owner comes and says that I want to start selling watches online, they shouldn't have to wait for like 2 months until we build a product if they can start selling tomorrow.
Yeah, I did it because I took an OpenCart application and I just applied a theme forest kind of a thing, and also I added a multi-seller account as well. So which means that you can also invite other shop people to also sell it, and everything I could actually do it within 20,000. So
that's great to hear.
and that too without any programming knowledge or anything. I learned myself and I did it, and it was very easy. So that's the reason we added some customization features and everything. So we thought that that will be a more incremental value, because in the market today, everybody knows that these are the open platforms. Even on the WordPress, you can design your shopping site. And then there are a lot of innovative features which now even credit card payment there are some cards which are offering. So, so today online shopping, creating a site is very
okay, if I can cut you short, right? This discussion is more on the incremental thinking than how do you build a website. But that's a very interesting topic. Maybe we can take it post Q&A. Once.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, my thought was that the points which we are saying is today that doesn't have an incremental value, because that's an needed, that's a free kind of a thing. So that's what I am trying to create it.
Sure, thanks for that, Krishna. I'll just go back to the PPT quickly. Sorry, we're running a little late on time. I think we were supposed to wrap up like 30 minutes back. So now we're open for questions and answers. I will just stop sharing because I'll just show you the thank you screen.
We have a couple of questions noted. Surabhi has them. Surabhi, over to you.
Yeah, I'll just share all the questions in the comment chat. Pooja, maybe you can just go over them one by one.
The first one is more like a comment. I think I already answered the questions associated with that comment. When do we do exploratory research versus target research? I'd love to answer that, but I'm sorry, this is not the forum where we're discussing user research. Maybe we take it offline. There's no functionality for cancellations of orders. It depends. So if customer care or contact us, or like a phone number is part of the MVP, then the cancellation can be done outside of the product as well, right? I think that was the idea for many groups to not put in cancellation as a feature in the product. Doesn't mean that in the workflow we've ignored order cancellations. How are we identifying the existing customers? Right now, from the case study point of view, one would get, like as a seller on any of the marketplaces, one would get basic analytics on who their end users are like. And the reason, in fact, one of the reasons that a company might want to build their own website and sell their products there is to get more in-depth analysis and more in-depth details on customers without paying like a bomb for it. So after we've gotten those analytics numbers, only then we'll be able to probably, put a demographic on who are the existing customers. And what are the major problems? Frankly, from my point of view, the major problem that has been faced is more of a people problem. So convincing everybody around you, meaning that the entire team has to be convinced of incremental value thinking and know how it has to be applied and where it has to be applied. So that is one of the major challenges, because to reap most benefits until everybody is doing it, it will not give you full benefit. Anybody else has tried to apply this and faced any issues or challenges?
Yeah, very true. People problems, everybody coming on the same platform, having the right similar kind of a thinking is the major challenge. So we are with you.
Thank you. Close. Now, I think we need to close. Akansh is giving me like angry looks. So.
Not at all. No, Pooja, you read me wrong. I was thoroughly enjoying the session, trust me. If there are no other questions, can we move on to the next segment? Okay, looks like there are no questions. So Pooja, thank you so much. I mean, certainly it was a very informative and an insightful session. The real icing on the cake was like, I mean, the way I saw it, it was not just about theoretical experience, but we actually made our hands dirty. That was real fun. I'm sure each one of the participant who's actually joined today has had some kind of a takeaway for sure, which they can get back to their work and also demonstrate there and have a better way of doing things. So certainly it was a great takeaway. So if you observe in your chat window for everyone, if you can just spare quick 1-2 minutes to give in your feedback, it will really help us for the future sessions as well. So request you all to use that chat functionality below and click on the URL for that particular feedback form and provide your thoughts. We will go through each one of them and come up even better the next time. And also, while you do that, while you put your feedback, I would also like to thank our sponsor for today, ThoughtWorks, for this for giving us this platform to demonstrate what we wanted to do. And also Pooja for quickly agreeing to come up with this session, which is something which is certainly very unusual and a unique one, and certainly which has a lot of takeaway for the kind of job we do, like business analysis and product management. This is a very key topic. And certainly there is a lot of takeaway from the session for each one of us. And third, all the volunteers and organizers, the organizing committee of BizNight. I'm sure this is just a 2-hour show for all of us, but trust me, there has been a lot that went into it. Since last couple of weeks, the organizing committee has been doing a lot to have this session very seamless and successful. So we'd like to thank each one of you. And also in the end, all the participants, because as I usually see, if I look at some other presentations and all, they're usually one direction. But here I saw there was a lot of interaction. I saw people leveraging a lot of chat and also putting in their questions, sharing their experiences, coming in, challenging the status quo. So all of that was real fun. I thoroughly enjoyed, and I hope each one of you did as well. Thanks to each one of you for joining and making it a successful event. Thank you so much. And please take a minute to give in your feedback in the form that is presented in the chat. Thanks once again.
For us to, sorry to interrupt, like for us to present, yesterday I shared an email to Geek Nights, like if I want to present my own event. So I shared one topic, but I got a bounce from that. This is not the right email. Yesterday when I attended the session, I think this was the Geek Night -HYD at ThoughtWorks. Is this the right email ID?
We may have to take a look at it. We'll certainly do that and get back to you, Krishna.
Yeah. So, okay.
Cool. Thanks, Krishna. And thanks everyone. It was fun. And Krishna, will surely get back to you on that. We'll take a look at that email and we'll certainly see what we can do for you.
No, I got a bounce back. So that's the reason the email on this Geek Night -HYD, I said that it's an invalid address. That's the reason I'm asking what's the right address.
We may just have to take a look at that and we'll let you know. We anyways have your email. So if there is anything, if that's not the right one, if you got a bounce back, we'll see if there is an alternate one and we'll see if we can accommodate something for you in the future.
Right, thanks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks all. Please keep your eyes open for the future communications from our side. It was really fun having each one of you. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Pooja. Thanks, Akansh.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Okay. Ending meeting. All right. Or do we want to?
Surabhi, you can maybe stop recording, or whoever is.
Post business.